Getting too much spam and want to better protect your personal data? Then try Incogni and get a 60% discount on an annual subscription when you use offer code SKILLUP at incogni.com/skillup. Click below to get started or stick around to the end of the video to learn more. Gamers, hello, how you doing? Hope you're doing well. Still working your way through Silksong, I assume. Me personally, I just got through Kronos: A New Dawn. Link to that video below the like button, and I was just about to boot up Silksong when I got an email from Sony being like, hey, here's your Ghost of Yotei review code. And I'm like, isn't that a little early? Then I saw the embargo and it's the 25th of September, a full week before the release of Yotei. You only do that sort of shit when you are feeling confident as hell. So yeah, do look forward to that review later this month. Before we begin the show though, I hope you'll forgive me if I take a moment to discuss something that's affecting basically every YouTuber I've spoken to thus far, and it's a random sudden drop in YouTube viewership. I first noticed it in mid-August when the news show was really underperforming all of a sudden, and that just doesn't happen. This is a show that's run for like 5 years now, and it's almost always had a similar number of views each and every week, give or take. Suddenly, it went from an average of like 250 to 275,000 views down to like 175K. And I was like, well, what the fuck? Is this it? Has it finally happened? Am I washed? But then I saw Linus Tech Tips doing a video about this where he was saying he was experiencing the exact same thing. I then spoke to more than a dozen content creators, and they all said they were experiencing the same thing, a sudden, inexplicable drop in viewership, circa 30% that kicked off mid-August. More recently, Yahtzee from Second Wind put out a video on the matter, and even the men from Milwaukee, Red Letter Media, were moved to put out a video about it. And it's not like Red Letter Media to complain about things. That's a joke, by the way. I love those guys. Anyway, bottom line, YouTube has fucked up something bigly. I've been a YouTuber for nearly 10 years now, and never once in that entire time have I ever blamed the algorithm for video performance. Not a single time, never once. But these numbers were so sudden, so stark, and so uniform that I couldn't come to any other conclusion. I have spoken to YouTube about this, and the only response I've gotten so far is, it all looks fine to us. And I'm like, yeah, thanks guys, really helpful. And they have promised to look into it further, so who knows what'll happen there. There are plenty of theories as to why this is happening, like AI age verification or a bot clean out or whatever. We don't know because YouTube won't tell us. So I'm covering this right at the top of the show so you know what's going on, and also to ask for your support as we fight to get over whatever the fuck this is. Every click of the like button is hugely helpful since the algorithm cares a lot about that. Same for making sure you are subbed and turning on notifications. Leaving a comment is also a big deal. And if you want to go even further and support us directly, there's now the website, and signing up over there is your best way to support what we do because the website is completely insulated from any of this algorithm bullshit. It's also the place where we can cover more and go much deeper than we can on the YouTube channel, as there's so much going on in a given week that it'd be impossible to cover it all in a 30-minute show. So if you want to get even more in-depth coverage that is 100% ad-free while also supporting us as a sustainable, reader-funded operation, head over there and sign up. I don't like talking about this stuff, to be honest, because I know it's not why you guys click on these videos, and I'd love to imagine that we can just manage this whole thing effortlessly and we'd never need to worry about any of this bullshit. But the truth is, we don't have a big corporate owner underwriting us, and we aren't so big that we have like that Mr. Beast money or whatever. We're just a small team trying to do our thing, and a sudden 30% drop in views is a problem. So we thought we'd at least make you guys aware of it while we try to navigate these tricky waters. Okay, that is enough inside baseball for now. Let's say we talk about some gaming news. Where else to begin but Hollow Knight Silksong, which has dominated every chart, YouTube channel, and newsfeed since it released a week ago. Damn, has it only been a week? Feels like way longer than that already. We covered last week that the launch crashed basically every digital storefront and saw a peak Steam concurrent player count of over 500,000 people, which made it the 18th most concurrently played game in the history of Steam. While we don't have confirmed sales numbers, we do have estimates from an analytics firm called Alinea. Based on their datasets, they estimate that Silksong sold through 5 million units in its first day, with 3 million of those being on Steam. They also predict that over 1 million people played the game on Game Pass. So a #1 bestseller, record-setting player counts, and literally crashing every digital commerce storefront. Not bad for a tiny team based in Adelaide, or as we like to call it, Radelaide. And we call it that because it sucks. There's nothing remotely rad about it. There is one more accolade to add to this list, however, and it's Silksong being the first game that pirates refused to pirate because they just have too much love for Team Cherry. IGN compiled comments from a piracy subreddit, and I think it'd be hard-pressed to get this sort of sentiment towards anything that the major publishers are releasing these days. Quote, "First game I've bought day of release in a decade probably," said Prizik on the piracy subreddit in response to a thread upvoted 7,000 times. "Not even the decade for me, it's the very first. added Vamsi Thopu, end quote. Another said, quote, support the devs if you can, they deserve it, added It's Nowby. There's plenty more where that came from too. The only game I will feel bad if I ever pirated it, said Beastfire24, end quote. One more to top us off, quote, I'm surprised too, added Aliot X. Many times people are like, I don't care if I pirate from indie developer, but on this one, everyone is pretty defensive against piracy. I'm fascinated, end quote. Me too, bro, but also kind of not really. I think most people are pretty happy to part with their hard-earned cash when they can see the value in something and when they can see that the people who are selling it to them are earnest and doing their best to exceed expectations. It's a low bar, I think, but one that is all too often not hit in the world of AAA video games, where publishers will ship broken, unfinished products stuffed with in-game spending, all while charging at least $70 for it and $80 if they can get away with it. That's not every AAA game, of course, but it's enough of them where there isn't a lot of goodwill in the tank when it comes to most major publishers, but there's no shortage of goodwill when it comes to the indie scene, and Silksong is the perfect reminder of that. It's not all sunshine and roses for Team Cherry though, because there is one group of people who are very unhappy with Silksong, and it's Chinese speakers. You might have already caught wind of this story, but while Silksong is racking up perfect scores from critics and most Steam users, those playing the game using the Chinese translation are giving Silksong a big old thumbs down. This isn't uncommon in the world of localization, since poor translations are a frustratingly common occurrence. That's usually related to overall quality, however, where a translation is getting things wrong or using AI instead of actual people. Here though, it's a little different. It turns out the translation here is a little too flowery? This was well covered by a blog called Localization Blog, and they revealed that Silksong's Chinese translation was done by two people, and one of them is a professor in classical literature. Where the original English text is short and sharp in its prose, the Chinese version is incredibly verbose. A simple line in English that reads, "You are the vessel, you are the Hollow Knight," gets translated into the Chinese equivalent of something like, "Thou art the chalice of destiny. Verily, thou art the primordial knight of hollowness." And that's real, by the way. I didn't just make that shit up. The issue was so bad that Team Cherry themselves were forced to acknowledge the matter. They wrote on Twitter, quote, "To our Chinese-speaking fans, we appreciate you letting us know about quality issues with the current simplified Chinese translation of Hollow Knight Silksong. We'll be working to improve the translation over the coming weeks. Thanks for your feedback and support," end quote. The last thing to shake out of the Silksong release was the old difficulty discourse, where some have argued that the game is hard for hard's sake, and others are arguing that it's actually fine, serving up the classic get good response. Having not played it yet, I can't comment, but the difficulty discourse does seem to be dying down now as people settle into the game. Still, I guess Team Cherry agreed with at least some of the feedback, because they did issue a patch a few days ago that nerfed 2 early game bosses to make them slightly easier. The other discourse around the game is actually around boss runbacks, which is something that video games as a medium have kind of moved on from since Dark Souls 2, but they make a bit of a return here with some lengthy runbacks that also require some precision platforming. It's a strange decision for Team Cherry to return to, since you won't find many people who lament the runbacks of old, so I don't know, maybe what's old is new again, but also maybe it's still bad and it should have been left in the past. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Okay, moving right along now. Borderlands 4 released earlier today, and it has not been going so well. The reviews are good though. It's sitting at a mighty 85 on OpenCritic, with most reviews pleased with the core gameplay, while also acknowledging that the formula hasn't evolved all that much. What's very concerning though is performance. I didn't receive an early review code, as 2K decided not to send out code to a number of outlets and reviewers, including Eurogamer, PC Gamer, ACG, Mr. Matty Plays, myself, and others. Some reviewers that did get their hands on it commented that PC performance wasn't great, and it seems like they weren't wrong, because Borderlands 4 launched to mostly negative reviews on Steam during its opening hours, with people complaining of poor performance and crashes. Since then, the review rating has improved to a mixed 58% at the time of writing, but performance problems still persist. Steam user Reg wrote, quote, "Terrible optimization, another Unreal Engine 5 casualty, not worth buying in its current state unless you have a NASA PC," end quote. Another Steam user who goes by the handle Santa Claus wasn't feeling particularly jolly, titling their review, quote, "Studderlands 4 review, an unholy trio of pricing, Unreal Engine 5 and Denuvo," end quote. On our side, Austin is currently playing through the title on a 4090 GPU, and he says that playing at 1440p high settings, DLSS set to quality, he's just cracking 60 FPS, and that is fucking insane. I'm gonna do my own testing on this over the weekend, but man, it's such a bummer to see yet another unoptimized PC release, since it seems to be the norm these days, at least when it comes to AAA games. Turning now to some Nintendo news, and this next story involves two of our least favorite things: Nintendo's legal department and video game patents. By now, you might have heard that Nintendo have just been granted a new patent by the US Patent Office. This reporting originally came from GamesFray, with follow-up reporting from Game Developer. The patent was filed in March 2023, before the release of Power World, and that's important. and it pertains to the summoning of creatures or allies to be used in battle by way of throwing a ball, you know, like in Pokemon. Nintendo was successful in their patent application, so that means in future there can never be another video game where you throw a ball at something in order to summon a creature to participate in a battle, or if a developer dare implement something like that, Nintendo could sue them out of existence. That is really fucked, but I'll be honest with you and say that it's yet another case of like, don't hate the player, hate the game. Well, I mean, you can hate both if you like, it's up to you, but you have to acknowledge that the entire concept of video game patents is properly fucked, and it limits innovation and game design across our industry. Imagine if the Dolly Zoom was patented by Warner Brothers so no other studio could use it in film. Imagine if the Choose Your Own Adventure books patented branching narratives in printed books. Imagine if T-Pain patented autotune. No one else would have been able to use autotune. Do you know how much better society would have been for that? Okay, I'm getting off track. Point is, this stuff totally blows, but while this legal framework exists, companies are going to utilize it because they're all gluttonous, competitive stuff goblins who are compelled to hoard as much IP and as many patents as they can. This is what they are hard-coded to do, and while Nintendo's actions here suck, the overall video game patent framework sucks even more, and I hope that legislators can one day intervene, but let's be real, America's got bigger problems than whether or not Nintendo can patent the Pokeball, so they're probably going to be dealing with other things first. One last little bit of Nintendo news now before we move on. Nintendo has settled their suit against Genki, the peripherals manufacturer who claimed to have knowledge of the design of the Switch 2 before Nintendo themselves had even revealed it. You might remember this from earlier this year when Genki had a booth at the Consumer Electronics Show in Vegas, and at that booth they had a 3D printed mock-up of the Switch 2 console. At the time, they told IGN that it was, quote, based on a real Switch 2 system that Genki had seen and used, end quote. But later they were like, no, actually, we were just guessing what the design would be. In court, they confirmed they had not, in fact, obtained a Switch 2 console from Nintendo or any other design document, so I guess the person who said that earlier was just straight up lying for clout or some shit. Nintendo agreed to settle the suit for an undisclosed sum, and Genki have also been ordered to permanently stop using any kind of insinuating terminology or designs that may allude to Nintendo's trademark property, such as the name Glitch 2 for its accessories, or Genki Direct for its video showcases, that one's particularly cheeky, or even color combos that mimic Switch color combos. A classic case of flying too close to the sun. It'll get you a star in Mario 64, it'll get you a lawsuit in real life. Here's some news that sucks. Blizzard co-founder Mike Morhaim's new publishing label Dreamhaven is already laying off staff. In this instance though, it's not one of those shitty Microsoft layoffs where they sack 9,000 workers while declaring record profits. It's the sadder kind, where stuff just isn't selling and a publisher who got into the business for the right reasons is forced to make cutbacks. Dreamhaven debuted a little while ago with the dream of being a haven for development talent, allowing new and experienced teams to make the sort of games that the AAA industry is generally uninterested to make. And that's exactly what they did. Their first release was the superb Wildgate, a co-op PvP game that was kind of like Sea of Thieves in space, and the second was the equally excellent Sunderfolk, a tactical RPG where you only needed one copy to play with up to 4 friends, since they could interface with the game using their phones. The reviews for both of these were very strong, Steam reviews equally strong. The problem was that they just didn't shift enough units. Bloomberg obtained an internal letter sent by Mike Morhaim, quote, 1 month after Dreamhaven launched Wildgate, a multiplayer shooter game, the company has sold just 130,000 units, according to the letter, which was seen by Bloomberg News. The company's other game, Sunderfolk, sold just 62,000 copies since its April debut. Morhaim would go on to write, quote, our monthly expenses are outpacing revenue. The focus now is urgently reducing costs, he said, adding that we are committed to Dreamhaven surviving through this, end quote. It's unclear how many jobs are affected, but it's really part of a larger story of just how difficult it is to get games to market these days, even really good ones. For every Expedition 33 that breaks through, there are dozens of AA and indie offerings that die on the vine, owing to a crowded landscape where players have so many options available to them, many of them being free. I think Morhaim's mission is an important one though, and the publisher already has a sterling track record in terms of the quality of their releases. Hopefully they can scale down and find an equilibrium that lets them continue their work, because it'd be a real shame to see everything this publisher has built go to waste. A quick lightning round to finish off, and the great censoring continues. As reported by Game Market, 2 developers are claiming that they've been told by Valve that no games with mature themes can utilize Steam's early access program. Heavy Hearts and the Restoration of Aphrodisia are both adults-only RPGs, and they claim to have received this information directly from Valve, putting a huge spanner in their development plans, since nothing in Valve's rules currently reflects this, and Valve has made no announcement about a rule change. It comes as storefronts like Valve and itch.io were pressured to delist hundreds of games featuring adults-only content, some of which related to sexual violence. But caught in the crossfire were a bunch of fairly vanilla adult-themed games that were either temporarily or permanently delisted. We've reached out to Valve for comment on this potential rule change, and we'll update you if and when we hear back. Apparently, the Switch 2 cartridges aren't exactly future-proof. This comes from Digital Foundry, who were chatting to Massive Entertainment's Robert Batten about the recent Switch 2 port of Star Wars Outlaws, a game that utilizes game key cards rather than proper cartridges with local data. We'd assumed that this was the go-to option because game key cards are cheaper for publishers to manufacture, but apparently that's not the only issue. Batten tells Digital Foundry that they're capped at about 400 megabytes per second transfer speed, which is not enough for the Snowdrop engine to work since the engine relies on a lot of data streaming to manage its open world sections. Quote, Snowdrop relies heavily on disk streaming for its open world environments, and we found the Switch 2 cards simply didn't give the performance we needed at the quality target we were going for. I don't recall the cost of cards ever entering the discussion, probably because it was moot, end quote. That's not great for the future of Switch 2 ports and overall game preservation, but what choice do developers have if the tech isn't up to the job? Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines 2 is probably walking back its ill-advised paywalling of core game content. Earlier it was revealed that 2 of the 6 clans available on day 1 would be locked behind a premium edition of the game, a practice that I thought was as dead as long boss runbacks, but I guess this is a big week for throwback vibes. Paradox announced on their Twitter account that they were making changes and would announce those changes on September 17th. In the meantime, anyone who's pre-ordered will get a refund. Sounds like this is going to have a happy ending, but when it comes to Paradox, you never know. How's that City Skylines 2 console port coming along, by the way? Some adaptation news now, and Life is Strange is getting a TV series courtesy of Amazon. I can definitely see this one hitting with the right crowd. The game naturally lends itself to a TV format given its episodic structure, and it does have a devoted fandom to lean on, so this one makes a lot of sense. One I'm a lot more dubious about is the recently announced Tomb Raider series. It's another Amazon show, and they just cast their lead, and it's Sophie Turner. I saw X-Men Dark Phoenix, and I have a very, very bad feeling about this casting choice. Impossible to have any bad feelings about the cast of the upcoming Street Fighter movie, though. You simply would not believe it if I listed all the names of the people in this movie, but just as a taster, 50 Cent is Balrog, Jason Momoa is Blanca, Roman Reigns is Akuma, and Eric Andre is Don Savage. It's now locked in for an October 26th release date. We will all be seated opening night. And finally, remember last week how we covered that Call of Duty movie announcement? Well, guess who's directing it? That's right, Steven Spielberg himself. Oh, sorry, wait, I got that wrong. He considered directing it, but then he passed on the project. That's a real shame, but it's understandable. Oh, what's that? I'm wrong again? Turns out Steven Spielberg wanted to direct it, but Activision turned him down because he wanted complete creative control and they said no. Are you kidding me right now? Could you imagine if Steven Spielberg knocked on your door with the promise of making your malleable, vacuous, disposable lift and drop IP into a feature film and you turn him down because you want to have control over the size of Captain Price's mustache? You think any of the executives who told Steven Spielberg no are going to be able to put out a better film than he could? God damn, man. Imagine what could have been. What a damn shame. A quick change to the show format, by the way. We're going to be moving the sort of free stuff section up a little and keeping it a little briefer in future. We feel like the whole free games and subscription landscape has changed considerably in the 5 years that this show has been running, and giving an in-depth rundown of each and every item doesn't make a lot of sense these days given that there's just so much of it and our backlogs are already so huge. So we're going to shout out stuff only if and when it makes sense, and we're going to do it here at the back end of the lightning round. With all that said, the big ones to keep in mind for this week are Monument Valley 2, which is the Epic Games Store freebie. And if you've got a Prime Gaming membership, it'd be silly not to pick up an Epic code for Into the Breach, one of the best strategy games ever, as well as a GOG code for the complete edition of Civilization 4. Enjoy. So what got announced or delayed this week? Well, not a lot if I'm honest with you, and if you ask me, it kind of feels like the blast zone of Hollow Knight Silksong pushed out more than just a few game releases this week, but there was one man who dared to stand up to Hornet, James Bond. Yes, if you had any interest in seeing how Hitman devs IO Interactive were going to handle the Bond license, then you will have no doubt caught the half-hour PlayStation State of Play presentation for this one, which basically showed off a full mission and then some. Of course, this isn't just coming to PS5, it's slated for PC, Xbox, and Switch 2 as well, but Sony did call dibs on announcing the release date, which is March 27th next year, getting in there nice and early. A couple of brave indies also stood up and announced their games to the world last week. One is from a new studio called Heartloop, who announced they were working on a single-player roguelite fighting game called Polyfighter. The creative director on this one is a guy called Osama Dorius, who did design work on games like For Honor, Hogwarts Legacy, and that cancelled Blizzard survival game. PC only for this one now, with playtest signups happening over on their website. Weirdly enough, Osama has a podcast with a guy called Rami Ismail, who also announced a new game last week. Rami is an old-school veteran indie developer who was one half of Vlambeer, the Dutch outfit behind the early roguelite hit Nuclear Throne. This new one is called Australia Did It, and it's the first new game from him in like 10 years. It's been developed with a studio called Anesthesian Labs, and they call it a, quote, turn-based tower defense meets reverse bullet hell, end quote. Man, big week for new genre mashups, I guess. Honestly, this one looks kind of cool. Love the old school PC character sprites, interesting concept, and I can never go past the Steam train. But seriously, what's the deal with the whole Australia thing? Like, what did we do? What are you accusing us of here? Is this like a Mad Max thing? Our country doesn't even have half the creatures in this trailer, which is saying a lot because we have a lot of creatures down here and most of them will try and kill you. I was serious when I said that we were light on announcements, so we're moving right along to what came out last week. We talked a lot about it at the top of the show, but of course Hollow Knight Silksong was the big one, and because nobody had advanced access, you had people absolutely racing through it to be the first to get a review up, which, as you can probably imagine, are the worst conditions to be playing a game while like trying to review it, but hey, what would I know? Anyway, for a little while there, Silksong was sitting at a mighty 100 on OpenCritic with exactly 9 reviews. That sits dropped down to the low 90s, but it does add another wild element to the very singular kind of launch that this game has had. No doubt if you've been wanting to play this one, you already are, but regardless, here's Screen Rant, who gave this one a, you guessed it, perfect 10 out of 10. Quote, after I rolled credits on Silksong, I was mashing my controller to get back into the game and immediately clear out the whole map. There is so much to uncover and I'm finding exploration much more fun than the original, to the point where I'm actively climbing through every nook and cranny with a smile on my face. Some of the game's toughest challenges lie in wait through optional encounters, making the experience all the more thrilling. Plus, every time I come across a new tool or crest, it could potentially open up a brand new playstyle that might end up becoming my favorite way to play. In other words, Silksong is the purest form of Metroidvania I've played in years, end quote. Next up is Hell Is Us, the new one from Rogue Factor and Nacon, a game that tries to mix things up in the third-person action RPG space, and honestly, it does a pretty good job of it, despite some pitfalls. You may have seen my review up on the channel and the website. I really like the swings this one took with its unguided approach to exploration. It feels so refreshing to be actively involved in a world like this, and I do think the approach to exploration makes up for a lot of the weaker elements like the story and the simplicity of the combat. I definitely think it's worth checking out, and I'm very much looking forward to seeing how they expand on this idea over time. That's also the general consensus for most of the reviews out there. Hell Is Us is sitting at a strong 79 on OpenCritic. Let's take a look at the GameSpot review that scored it 7 out of 10. Quote, while I was left dissatisfied by the narrative conclusion of Hell Is Us, its journey to that point was pleasantly engaging. It was refreshing to not just follow a quest marker through a story, but also a relief that I was never spun around for hours on end wondering where I needed to go next. This balance is what made traversing Hadia and experiencing all the horrors it contained a rewarding one, making each new step feel earned rather than routine. It's backed up by an imperfect but engaging combat system that's only let down by some shallow enemy variety and imprecise controls, but never to the point of outright frustration, end quote. Alright, moving along to another kind of spooky title this week, Kronos The New Dawn. This is the new one from Bloober Team, and another one I took a look at this week. You can find my review for this one on both the channel and the website, but TLDR, to me, the story didn't hit, but looking at the comments on that video, it definitely seems to have hit for other people, so your mileage may vary. What we can all agree on though is that the visuals are stunning, the level design is excellent, and the action survival horror combat is top tier, truly excellent stuff. It's unlikely to be the game that pushes Bloober Team into the upper echelons of the survival horror genre, but it's definitely one step closer, and it'd be difficult to not be excited about the future of this studio after this. Over on OpenCritic, it seems the consensus was generally in that kind of ballpark. It's sitting at a strong 79 at the moment. There are some recurring complaints about the homages they pay to their influences coming through a little bit too clearly for some conflicting opinions around its difficulty and pacing, and combat is also kind of a coin flip depending on who you ask. Here's what GamesRadar had to say when they scored it 3.5 stars out of 5, saying, quote, Kronos The New Dawn is an unabashed mashup of survival horror's greatest hits from Dead Space to Silent Hill, and its references make it a thrillingly familiar experience for fans of the horror genre. The only problem, which is at times significant, is a frustrating inventory system that can make combat feel more irritating than tense. Still, this is an atmospheric and uniquely introspective adventure for those who value a game's story as much as its action, end quote. Alright, so what's coming out this week? Well, plug your ears and get ready to scratch those itchy trigger fingers, because the big one for the week is Borderlands 4, the looter shooter that arguably started it all, and the one that everyone seems to either love or hate, sometimes fluctuating between the two depending on the game or the medium, or how much you've seen Randy Pitchford on your social media feed lately. This one's got a rare Friday launch, September 12th. Will I be playing this one? I think probably, but I've also got Silksong and Ghost of Yoto to play through, and I am going to Tokyo Game Show this month, so hopefully you'll understand if this one takes a bit of a backseat for now. I would have loved to have reviewed this one prior to launch, but 2K declined to send me a review code. If that's the price I have to pay in order to make jokes about Randy Pitchford, I will gladly pay it any day of the week. Something a little bit different to the abrasive quips and gunshots of Borderlands, look no further than next Monday, September 15th, which is when the distinctly quieter co-op game LEGO Voyages from Annapurna Interactive releases. We've mentioned this one before. It's being developed by the team who did LEGO Builder's Journey, which was a weirdly emotional freeform puzzle adventure game where you helped a son and his dad go hiking and traverse tricky terrain. This one looks lovely too, and it's coming out on all platforms. More curated co-op adventures needed, please and thank you. Split Fiction already feels like it was years ago now, even though it was like like only the start of the year. If you're up for something a little more unsettling, indie publisher Critical Reflex are releasing the very disturbing anxiety horror game No, I Am Not a Human on Monday. This one has quite a bit of buzz behind it on account of an effective demo and streamers going really hard on it, and you can kind of see why. Imagine you're playing Papers, Please, only it's set in the post-apocalypse, and you're trying to identify who's a human and who is this absolutely terrifying mutant in order to, try and survive the end times, I guess. Just don't play it right before bed, PC only for this one. Moving right along to Tuesday, September 16th, that's when EA is releasing one of the 2 live service tentpoles they're hoping to prop their business up on this financial year. Skate, that is right, their more grounded but still goofy Tony Hawk competitor got a bit of a resurgence in the Game Pass era, which prompted them to reboot and rethink it as a free-to-play live service offering. It's been in a closed playtest for quite some time now, and this launch is its public early access release on PC, PS5, and Xbox consoles. A couple of the guys on the team already got access to this one and have been deep into it already, especially our resident real-world skater, Stu. He worked up an absolutely fantastic preview for this one over on the website last week. Stu was a hardcore Skate series fan, so he definitely had a lot to say about EA's approach to this new one. Long story short, he says the skating gameplay is fantastic, A+ for that, but the whole live service wrapper is weirdly and disappointingly corporate, which is completely at odds with the anti-establishment origins of skateboarding, the series, and even the game itself in some ways. Really worth reading that one. Trust me on this, it's just a great write-up. It's free to all, so please give it a click. I'll leave a link to it in the description below. If none of that stuff coming out next week floats your boat, then you might be looking for something completely different and out of left field. So put this on your radar.
Welcome. This is Henry. If Henry's anything, they're, well, everything. And that's how Henry lives everyday life.
This bizarre game is called Henry Halfhead, and it comes from a little indie studio in Switzerland called Lululu, not the weird talking doll things, by the way. This is a very quirky game where you have to play a dude who is literally half a head and has the power to possess everyday objects in order to use them. You'll go through a narrated story as you explore what life is like for Henry as he gets a job, gets old, and in practice this translates to a bunch of puzzle scenarios with amusing and off-kilter solutions and a collection of amusing playgrounds that you can mess around in. Kind of reminds me of Goat Simulator in a weird way. A bunch of playgrounds with light objectives, but making your own fun is the real joy. It's also got a co-op mode and it releases on September 16th for PC, Switch, and PS5. Free demo on Steam right now as well. If you like the look of it, you can find a link to it over on our Steam curator page, which also has links to all of the other Put This on Your Radar stuff we've recently covered. I'll leave a link to all of that below the like button. Our feel-good story for the week is a nice one. Did you get that thing in Death Stranding 2 where the cast of the game will sing you happy birthday in a weird sort of creepy scene if you happen to be playing the game on your actual birthday? Well, Kojima released the mocap session footage of that, and it's really nice and really wholesome, and there's a lovely little surprise for one of the performers at the end. Enjoy.
Pizza's here.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Elle. Happy birthday to you.
Okay, so that's the show, ladies and gents. A lot to look forward to on the channel this week. We've got the podcast going up this weekend, and we managed to score an interview with the game director for Hell Is Us, so do look forward to that. We've also got Austin's Lost Soul Aside review going up, and he did not enjoy that game, sadly. I'm working on a few things at the moment, including Ghosts of Yote, but also some other stuff that I can't spoil yet. September is always madness, and we wouldn't have it any other way. The new show keeps on keeping on, though. And if you enjoyed it, we'd love it if you could drop the video a like and comment down below. Be sure to subscribe and ding that notification bell. And like I said at the top of the show, if you want to get even more in-depth coverage, consider signing up over at thisweekinvideogames.com for ad-free gaming news, opinions, interviews, features, deep dives, and more. Thanks again for tuning in, and a big thanks to this video's sponsor, Incogni. Another week, another few dozen hours of my time saved thanks to this video sponsor, Incogni. Oh, you haven't heard of them before? Well, let me ask you this. Are you getting too many spam emails and spam phone calls? I sure did, and while I still get some of them, I get a hell of a lot less thanks to Incogni. Sure, we know big corporations like Apple and Google have our data because we hand it over to them, but what you probably don't know is that hundreds of other companies that you've never heard of also have your data because it's been on-sold by various data brokers. These companies can then on-sell your data to other companies, spammers, or worse, malicious actors looking to use your personal data to commit identity theft. Now, the loophole here is that you can technically contact these companies and ask them to delete your data, but not only do you not know who has your data, but there are just so many of these data brokers that it would be impossible for you to contact all of them. That's where Incogni comes in. You sign up, you enter your details, you grant it the required permissions, and after that, Incogni does all the work for you, sending out hundreds of automated requests to reclaim your data. Take me, for example. Incogni has sent out over 147 requests on my behalf, which has resulted in my data being removed from 138 data brokers. 138! I had absolutely no idea that 138 data brokers even had my data, and now thankfully they don't, thanks to Incogni. If I was to have submitted all those requests myself, doing all the paperwork and the back and forth, it would have taken me around 103 hours, making Incogni incredibly well priced given how much value it delivers. I've absolutely noticed a significant reduction in the amount of spam emails and texts I've been getting, and it just feels nice to know that my data is more secure since no one wants their personal information being held by some company that you didn't even know existed. It's super easy, super effective, and best of all, super affordable. You can use code SKILLUP at incogni.com/skillup to get 60% off an annual subscription. Take your personal data back and get a 60% discount while doing it by visiting incogni.com/skillup and using offer code SKILLUP at checkout. Thanks Incogni for sponsoring the video, and thank you for watching it.